Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my Valorant Champion Soul Power Rankings tier list. This list does seem pretty tough, I think. Just looking at the teams, there are realistically I don't know, 9 teams that can win this tournament. I think that's probably it. But yeah, that's a lot more than normal. Like last year I'd say it was like 5. It's normally around like 3 or 4 going into every tournament. So it's very interesting to see here where you have this many teams that could potentially go on a run and make it deep. Now, do I think the level of play across all 16 teams is maybe what it was for last year? No, I don't think so. I think this generally for every team is a little bit worse. But yeah, that's what makes it interesting too. That means the teams are closer together. And yeah, I don't know. This tournament should be very fun. Should be very interesting. Don't know if it's going to live up to the hype of the last couple champs, but should be very interesting regardless. If you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And stay tuned for my rebuild series that's coming after champs and after Ascension. I don't know when exactly I'm going to start it because of Ascension being after champs this year, but we will see. I'm just gonna rebuild like every team in the 3 main leagues, and or for me at least, everybody but China, so Pacific, Americas, and EMEA. And yeah, I think that is the best content I make on this channel. So go check that out if you're interested. And yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so we'll start with the D tier here, where I feel like at least 2 of these teams should be pretty obvious. Maybe one of them, one of these two is just like people are coping about. But we'll start with 16, which is Billy Billy. I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody who's watched China. I just don't think they're very good. Like, they don't play good fundamental Valorant. They don't have the level of individual players that maybe some of the other Chinese teams do in FPX, Trace, and EDG. And even if YZ goes crazy at this tournament, I really don't think that they're going to do too much. Um, Maybe they could be better than some of these teams above them, like in this tier, but other than that, I don't really see them making out of groups or doing anything significant at this tournament. Then at 15, we have Crew, another team that might be a surprise to some people, but I just think there's too many good teams at this tournament. For the 4th place team from Americas, that I think is one of the weaker regions, it's either them or China heading into this tournament. And I mean, they just limped through stage 2. They have a habit of making these tournaments late in the year, like barely making it through LCQ after winning 0 games all year and then looking terrible at this tournament. For them, it was the opposite as well. They started stage 1 really well, and then stage 2 they played like absolute shit and then barely limped into champs, which by my standards is worse for them. So I don't know. I don't see Crew making too much of a run here. I think it is possible. Like they're in the same group as Billy Billy, but I do think it is more possible for them to maybe sneak through lowers by beating a DRX or something, and maybe make a run at playoffs with Kesnit going crazy or something. I think they have more of a win con than Billy Billy, which is why I have them a spot higher. But also, I think the floor of some of these teams above them is just a little bit more. One of those teams being Talon, who is my last team in this tier. Yeah, for me looked really good. Uh, for them in Pacific. Some of these comps that they're running, man, I just don't get it. Like, they're playing a lot of Clove, which I don't love. They're playing a lot of like ISO as well, which again, don't love it. Um, but I do think they kind of trolled some of their comps in their elimination games, or not their like seeding games, which kind of put them in a tough spot in terms of a group, being in a group with Vitality and Leviathan. So I fully expect them to bomb out in groups. But I do think it is some good experience for these Talon players and is absolutely worth going to this tournament for them. I just don't know how much they're going to actually be able to do. All right, now moving on to C tier, where we're going to have something that I've never done before. And I'm going to rank EDG as the third ranked Chinese team, which I don't think I've ever rated them below number one for China heading into a tournament. And a lot of people are fairly high on this team heading into this tournament. Yes, they have been winning a lot at this back half of stage two with weeks 3 and 4, as well as all of their playoff games. They won all of them. And yes, they do look better than they did heading into Shanghai, but I don't think it's that much better. I think nobody's calling is about the same as Haodong. And I really don't think Simon is playing super well individually. It's definitely better than Haodong was. Um, I do like the roles that they're playing with Kankang more on the Neon and or on the Neon sometimes at least. And I think this team should look better, but I think comparatively to the rest of the field, I do favor some of these other teams more in terms of having a higher floor in terms of like yeah, they're going to be I know that they're going to be at least a certain level. With EDG, obviously they could make a run. They always can. It's EDG, they have Kankang on this team. They can do anything. But I don't see it with this team yet. I think they need a little bit more time together. Maybe this event is where they start the improvement with this iteration of this roster with Simon and the team. And then I think the next event you could see maybe them going on a run deeper into a tournament, maybe towards that like top four area. But for right now, I just like the floor of some of these other teams a little bit more, just because you just don't know what you're getting with EDG a lot of the time. So I do have EDG as my third ranked team, but I also have them or from China, but I do have them in the same tier as my number 12 team, Trace. Um, and I think what it comes down to with Trace being above EDG is just they play better comps and more and like just better fundamental valor. Like, yeah, EDG destroyed them when they played. But I do think, I mean, like Trace beat FPX in playoffs pretty handily and almost beat them in the lower final. So like, I think that's pretty high praise. I know FPX didn't play the greatest in playoffs. Like Billy got a map on them. They didn't beat EDG in the finals, but I fully expect FPX to continue like building upon what they did at Shanghai. Um, I don't have a ton to say about Trace because I don't know a ton about them other than the games that I watched at playoffs. But Kai looks really good. Their Sentinel player, so he's a player to watch. Bianc, who I believe played for Billy at their champs run, he did. He still looks pretty good. So those are two players to watch. I know people are high on Fang F. I didn't see a ton in the games that I did watch from him, um, but I'll be looking out for him at this tournament. He could be really good as well. Um, so yeah, just a bunch of players to look out for this team, a team that's new to the international stage. So I'm not going to rank them too high. But I mean, in my pick'ems, I had them beating Vitality in that opening round. Now they did still get grouped, but um, yeah, that just shows you kind of what I think about this team, which I just think they're a very solid team. I don't know if they're gonna make it out of groups or anything. I don't think they really have the upside to do that. But honestly, if we're talking about winning the tournament for Chinese teams, I think it's them or EDG that are going to do it, and I would actually favor them to win over EDG just because I think they have that higher floor. I don't think, even though I do have FPX a lot higher than Trace in the end here, I really don't see a world where FPX playing the comps that they play wins the tournament. So now onto the B tier, where we're going to have to talk about the most amount of teams here. So I think we just start off this conversation real quick with the RX. at number 11. I don't think this should be too hot of a take. I think DRX is a solid floor. I think they should make it out of their group. I think they could have some expectations of winning this tournament. When I talked about in the intro the 9 teams that could win this tournament, I did not put them in my head there, but I do think some people think it's possible because everybody always thinks DRX has a chance of winning. And I think this tournament, this team has a higher ceiling in the future for other tournaments. But for right now, when you're bringing Bane, Foxy9, and Flashback, technically Foxy9's played at international events before, but Bane and Flashback, their first international events, and Mako's first international event, IGLing. I think you could see some holes in their gameplay probably, uh, as you really did all of stage 2, where they didn't have a good regular season performance, but yeah, they did beat Paper X in playoffs and make the final. Do I really care? Not really, to be honest. The one thing that I do actually care about though is that Mako is playing a lot better individually than he was when he first started IGLing, which is a very good sign. Um, you still want to see him kind of go all the way back to that, maybe not have to IGL. That would be great. But I do think Bane kind of helps with that a little bit, just being that like secondary caller. I think Flashback's been pretty good. I mean, he's been better than since switching to Sentinel, but Foxy9's been worse in my opinion since switching to Flex. So I think this team should still have to make some changes after champs. I don't think they're going to be perfect. I think the expectation for this team should be to make playoffs and get as much experience for these younger players as possible, and then head into next year, maybe with a new IGL, maybe with a really, really good flex player. You could even, hell, bring in Yeoman here to play the flex for DRX and then have everybody else playing the same stuff. Or like Foxy9 out, Yeoman in, and then Mako goes back to being the greatest smokes player of all time. And I think this team could be in a really good spot. But I think this tournament for them, similar to Talon in a sense, is all about experience. Then moving on to number 10, where I have Foot. People were saying that my Group D pick'ems were bad. I'm hoping that's because I had G2 beating Paper Rex and not because of anything else in there, like Foot or EDG getting grouped. Because I don't see it with Foot anymore. Like, they went into playoffs, they lost to Fnatic, they lost to Heretics, the two teams that I think are the rest of the competition in EMEA. And I don't think they're better than Vitality either. I mean, they're stage 2. They they're fine, I guess. They dropped the map to Koi. They beat Navi, who was looking really bad to start the split, and kind of got a little bit better towards the end. They lost to Heretics, which I think they got destroyed in this game, right? It wasn't close, but it wasn't like not close. Gentlemates, pretty handily beat. Giants, pretty handily beat. I mean, they did destroy Giants. And then once you got to playoffs, you kind of just lost to Fnatic in a kind of close game, and then lost to Heretics in definitely a close game. So obviously, this team is still good. There's a reason that they still rank in this B tier. Um, but I think they just kind of haven't gotten better. I think they've kind of just stayed the same. And I think that's fine. I think you'll get more experience for Yedage. Maybe figure out if you do need to make a change or two heading into the offseason. But I really don't think this team has the upside to win the tournament. Or I don't even think this team has the upside to beat G2 or Paper X in groups, in my opinion. I think they have some good individual players. I think they play solidly fundamentally, but I don't think that they're too great as a team. Then moving on to number 9, where People aren't going to like this. I have Sentinels. I just think, yes, they can win the tournament. They are one of the 9 teams. I think the next 8 teams do belong in that could win the tournament tier. I also think there's a downside to Sentinels where they go out 0-2 in groups. Uh, does some of that have to do with their group? Yeah. Do I think they could have gone 0-2 in Group C if you replaced them with, or Lev with them? Possibly. In Group D, if you replace them with G2, yeah. Group A, probably not 0-2, but I'd still think that there's a chance that they get grouped if you replace Crew with them. I just think they're not a top 2 team in Americas right now. I don't think that's a particularly hot take. And I don't think Americas is a super strong region right now, which I don't think, for people that do watch every region, I don't think that's a super hot take either. I've been on the train of Americas is the best region for a while. But after Shanghai and after watching all of these teams throughout the splits or split twos, I don't think Sentinels is up there for one of the best teams. They've had a kind of disappointing split two for the expectation of this team is getting back to regional dominance like they did at kickoff and at Shanghai, or not at Shanghai, like they did at Madrid, where they kind of rolled through that tournament outside of Gen G. And again, I don't see it. I don't see that same level of dominance. Like, yes, they brought out some new comps. They won the first 3 weeks of Americas. They lose to G2, they lose to 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves that wasn't looking particularly great, all split until the end. And even then, it wasn't like fully back to what they were in stage one. And then that 100 Thieves proceeded to lose to G2 and to Crew, who I don't have ranked very high. I do think in this break, Sentinels could cook up maybe a new comp or two. There's a reason I had them beating Genji in my pick'ems. Uh, but overall, I just don't see them going too deep, especially in this group, which does not factor into this ranking, by the way. It's just the reality of the situation where they're probably going to get grouped. If they do make playoffs, maybe they could do something, but I really honestly don't see them doing anything even if they do make playoffs. Which kind of sucks because I will be rooting for Sentinels a little bit, but there are definitely teams above them that I'll be rooting for them a little bit more. Then we have Lev. I think this will be surprising to some people, even more than the Sentinels one. I do have G2 quite a bit higher than Lev, and I'm going a little bit more off of the last tournament in terms of or Shanghai rather than like the splits with this and G2's ranking. But yes, Lev do look a lot better. There's a reason that they are towards the top of this tier. They look, I mean, they won all of Americas in stage two, and I think that is a big thing. They looked very, very good towards the end of the split. But when you saw them get to Shanghai and play against these good teams of Genji, T1, and Foot, you see them just decide to shit the bed. I think their map pool does look a little bit better than it did then, which was probably a big reason. But if they don't make improvements on like their composure and their team play in these big moments, I don't see this team even making it out of groups. I do have them going through uppers and groups. I think they are easily the best team in Group C, or maybe not easily. I think they are the best team in Group C. Uh, do I actually? Actually, yeah, I'm gonna move them up a spot because I do have Vitality over them here. Um, Actually, you know what? I'm gonna move them to the top of this B tier, to number 6. So we are gonna change this up a little bit. But yeah, they did win Americas. They do look a lot better. But the reason they're in this B tier, and I think like I had to actually talk it out to realize this. The reason that they're in this B tier still is just because I don't trust them at an international event playing against top teams. I really don't think G2 played very well in that grand finals. I don't think Crew is that good of a team still, even though they did make that lower bracket final. And they barely beat Crew. Um, so I don't know. They beat G2. I'll give them credit for that. There's a reason that they are at the top of this list, or at the top of this tier, but I don't think they're necessarily proven to be very good yet. Then we'll do number 8, the new number 8, I guess, which I had Vitality. The other team that I think is very good in their group. And I think another team with quite a bit of upside. There is a lack of international experience on this team in terms of runner and with kicks. But Trek, Safe, and Sender have all played at international events before. I don't think Sender's IGL'd at one before, which could be an issue. Well, I think we'll say a lack of international experience with Sender, runner, and kicks. Adding Sender into that tier. Trex and Safe have played at international events together before on Guild, and I think overall are a very good duo for this team. I think you should see Sender looking very good in the calling, or in terms of the IGL role. I think he is very solid at that. I don't think he is one of the best IGLs at this tournament or anything. I think you'd rate, I don't know, probably 1, 2, oh wait, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait, 4. I wouldn't put them over them. 5, 6. I think he's a top half IGL looking at this list. Which kind of is crazy because I don't think he's like an elite IGL or anything. I think he's just kind of good, but I think he'll do the job for them, get them through groups here. I think they could make a run in terms of playoffs. And when you have Safe on this team, he could always just hard carry them through the last like couple games in the tournament and possibly get them to a trophy, especially if runner and kicks are performing to the standard that I know that they can hit. Like I think runner's sentinel play has been very, very good in certain games. I think it's been kind of worse when you got into like playoffs and stuff, uh, when like the pressure ramped up. So that's kind of concerning to me at least. But after this tournament, he should be getting quite a bit of experience. And I think, again, that is the name of the game for this team, as well as DRX, as well as Talon. I think a lot of these teams should be kind of taking the approach of getting to these international events, getting the experience, and just kind of starting to build their team with like young talent as well. Then we have FPX, where I think some people are going to want to rank this team lower because of their not as great in, like in region, like regional play. That's what I wanted to say, is in terms of their not as great regional play. But I think for this team, if you watch their games at Shanghai, or if you remember their games at Shanghai, they beat Foot in kind of a big upset with their really wacky comps, playing this like triple smokes on Icebox, playing triple smokes on Lotus. I mean, I think they play Harbor Omen on Sunset. Like they play a lot of weird stuff with these comps. But also they have some of the best individual players at this tournament in terms of just shooting. Like I think Life is insane. I think Ayung is super underrated for this team. Autumn as well. I think Berlin a lot of the time gets a lot of shit for being not that great of an individual, but to me, there's games where he just turns up. Like in that Heretics game at Shanghai, he was cooking on Icebox at least towards the end. Or like it's good to see that he has the ability to just say, "Hey, I'm gonna shoot people," and it kind of works sometimes. So I think this team kind of has that it factor. Um, when like I think their icebox should be one of the best at this tournament, maybe outside of Lev. I think Lev is the only team that I'd say, yeah, it's definitely better. Um, I think their sunset's pretty good still. I think that should catch some teams off guard. I think a big reason they lost that like grand final to EDG is just because regionally so many teams have played against them that they're used to it. But when they're going up against teams that they've never played before, like Sentinels. Like, I mean, Heretics has played them before. I did have them beating Heretics, getting that revenge. I think that's the one team that I'd actually favor them, or maybe not favor them over. I'd have them maybe having a chance at upsetting. But what they're playing against, like Sentinels, when they're playing against some of these other teams that they've never played before, like DRX, maybe like Fnatic, uh, I think you could really see them get some upsets because of these big, or like weird comps and stuff, and I just like the individual skill on this team. I think I like a lot of the players on this team in terms of just how good they are. Not necessarily like I'm a fan of this team or anything. I don't even think I'm gonna be rooting that hard for this team. Maybe outside of their group's performance, just so my predictions seem correct. But yeah, I'm really high on this team coming into this tournament. I didn't think I would be that high. Like I didn't think would be an insane place to put them. But based on the comments on my predictions video, I think it is kind of high. So I'm glad I'm high on a team, but I did not expect it to be FPX. Now moving on to the B tier, where we're gonna start the B tier, the A tier, where we're gonna start with Paper X at number 5. I think this should be pretty obvious from these 5 remaining teams. I think honestly, some people might have Paper X even lower than I do. And there's some people that are going to say that I'm way too low on Paper X and that they are one of the favorites to win this tournament and everything like that. I think they have, honestly, I think they have a higher chance of going 0-2 in their group than they do of winning the tournament. And do I think it will be somewhere in between that? Absolutely. I think they will get probably top 6, maybe top 4, look pretty good, and just go out. I just don't think this roster is going to win a tournament ever again. I think they need to make a change somewhere, whether it be Mindfreak, who kind of shit himself at Shanghai, or Devi, who also shit himself at Shanghai, but I don't think he's like an issue otherwise. Like, I think he'll be fine at this event. Mindfreak, I'm genuinely concerned about. Jing, who ever since coming back into this roster, at least in stage 2, has not been very good in terms of fragging. I still think he's a pretty good entry player, everything like that. So I still think he is a big part of this team and should stay. And he's hit such high highs that I don't think one split of underperforming for him is a big deal. Like I think he honestly should be back to performing very well, even as soon as this tournament right here. And if he does, I think they might outperform this 5th ranking. But for right now, I can't rank them in the top tier. I can't rate them over these next 2 teams in A tier. I just think they're gonna be very good at this tournament, but I don't think they're gonna light the world on fire per se. Then at number 4, I have Fnatic. No surprises here. Obviously, they didn't perform to the standard that you really expect during Shanghai. For them, they got a bye into playoffs and immediately went out in 2 games. That being said, they have looked so much better in stage 2. They literally have not lost a game since then, which is insane to think about. Um, like only dropping maps to BBL when they had just came back, so I'm not gonna blame them too much for that one. Vitality, who I think again, like looking at my ranking here, I think is a very good team. Dropped one to Carmine Core in playoffs when they had time to prep for Fnatic, and then dropped one map to Vitality in the grand final. So they, by all metrics, they should be very good. But the only reason I don't have them higher than this is just because I am a little bit concerned about Hero. Not because he's been performing bad. I think he's been fucking insane for this team. I think, honestly, on this Gecko role, I think he has been, or on specifically Gecko, I think he has been better than Leo. I think the Fade, obviously, Leo is probably the best in the world on. So you can't really rate him over Leo there. But I think the Sentinel play has been very good. I don't think it's better than Alpha, but I think it's better than Chronicle. Has been, I mean, I think he is a big reason why Chronicle has been like revitalized in this team. Um, just playing more of the Sova stuff that Chronicle is very, very good at. Um, because I think he always played pretty well on Bind to Sky. So being able to play more like different roles here for him, I think is very good. And a big reason why this team is playing very well. Durka, always very good, just probably the most consistent duelist in the world right now. Uh, as well as Alfier, who is playing a bunch of different stuff for this team now. He's played some Breach, he's played some Sentinel, he's played some ISO, he played some Clove even, which I totally forgot about. What the fuck did he? What map did he play it on again? Bind. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Um, and yeah, I just think he is just very good. I don't know if he's like the best like breach player per se in terms of like using the utility, but in terms of like the shooting on that role and being able to play like that role as well as other people playing different roles that they're more comfortable on. Um, I think this team has just been super revitalized. If they do well at this tournament, I'm gonna have a very hard time going back to Leo, even though Leo might actually be like a top 5 player in the world. It's gonna be hard to because I think this team, in terms of having Hero in the team, gels together maybe a little bit better and is playing like better comps right now for this team's strengths. So, I mean, I didn't even touch on Boaster probably being the best IGL at this tournament in terms of no, I'd go second best. I'd go Valen over him in terms of just pure calling. Um, but yeah, Boaster being a top 2 IGL at this tournament, I think this team should be set up to go very deep, especially in this very, very easy group. I think they are very clearly the best team in Group A. And yeah, I'm just very, very high on Fnatic for this tournament. And then we just touched on it. G2, Valen being the best IGL at this tournament, I think is probably the biggest reason why I do have this team this high. They played very well in Split 2 up until that grand final. I think they played very, very poorly in that game. It was an off game for them, probably. So I'm not super concerned about it. But there is a reason that they are in this A tier. And it's just because I think at Shanghai, G2 looked very clearly worse than Genji and Heretics, even though they did beat Heretics twice. I mean, okay, I wouldn't say they're very clearly worse than Heretics, but I do think Heretics is getting a lot better in terms of adding Minibu back into the team and Woot playing a more comfortable role for himself. I just think that these other two teams are clearly better than G2, and G2 still should be set up for a deep run, and I think they're probably, I mean, I think they're pretty clearly the best team in this tier. Uh, honestly, I think they're a tier up. I think we'll move them up a tier, honestly, to S tier, just because every individual in this team puts in work. Leaf, probably the best Sentinel player at the tournament. Yes, 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 yeah, yeah. Leaf is the best Sentinel player at this tournament. Um, yeah, I'd rate him up there. Trent is one of the better initiator players. Joan is the best flex, probably like top 2, maybe next to Forsaken. Um, and Valen is a very good individual. Icy has been performing a lot better individually on this duelist role. So you love to see that for this team. I think he's a big, big piece on how deep this team can go in this tournament. It's very dependent on him, but I think overall, he should be able to perform to at least if he performs the same that he did at Shanghai, I think this team should be set up to go very deep. You just worry about maybe in those big games against the best teams in the world. Will Icy be good enough to get them through those games? I think that is the biggest question with this team, but I do still think that they're very much set up for success. Then at number 2, I have Genji, the reigning champions. I don't think there's much I need to talk about this team. I know I had them going out 0-2 in my pick'ems. I think that's just like bad group, honestly. And I also very much acknowledge that these could be wrong, and I'm just going for maybe not a hot take and like trying to have a hot take, but like going for something a little wacky, just for fun, you know. Uh, so yeah, I had that in my pick'ems, but I think the most likely thing is they win their first game. If they play FPX like I predicted FPX to beat Heretics, then I think they beat FPX pretty easily, and I think they just walk in the playoffs and are one of the best teams at the tournament. Um, Texture, quite possibly the best player in the world right now. Karon, the best smokes player in the world right now. Lakia is performing a lot better individually, which is a huge thing for this team because he was the one like underperformer. Munchkin's the best fragging IGL, and Meteor I think is a very very good Sentinel player. I don't think he's like top 2, top 3 or anything at this tournament, but I do think he is definitely up there for one of the best Sentinel players, probably around top 5. And then that leaves Heretics at number 1. I don't care that they haven't been maybe as great regionally. Like, yeah, they dropped the map to Giants. Yeah, they dropped the map to Gentlemates. Yeah, they dropped one to Koi. Yeah, they lost to Vitality twice. It doesn't matter. They like were gonna make champions either way. They didn't lose in the regular season, so I really don't care. I think they're probably hiding some stuff, some new comps. I think they did a little bit of trolling, uh, changing up their icebox comp, even though they did win against Vitality. I just think their icebox playing the Woot Jet and the oh they lost it to Vitality the first. Oh no, they barely beat Vitality. Okay, so again, I think they should go back to the Woot Jet. Maybe make Miniboo learn the Gecko or something like that because I think the Woot playing Duelist on that map is just good for this team in general. So I don't know. I think this team should get better in terms of every player individually. I think Miniboo getting added into this team and Woot going over to the flex will give them extra firepower, which is insane to think about. Rienz is one of the best initiator players. Benji's one of the best sentinel players. Boo is a very, very, very good IGL. I don't know if he's top 3, top 4 maybe, but he's still very good and very proven. And I think this team should be set up to be the favorites for this tournament, honestly. I was like going through Shanghai, it's like, yeah, this team is winning champs. Maybe they're not winning this tournament, but getting Miniboo back, they're going to win champs. I'm going to stick to that. I was originally planning on having them alone with Gen G in this tier, and I think G2 makes it seem a little bit closer. And I do think it is pretty close, but I do think, in my opinion, Heretics should be the favorites for this tournament. So, with that, that's it for my tier list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. There are definitely going to be some hot takes on this one. I know that. So be sure to let me know. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.